Welcome to the Deep Dive, a Syropotami magazine podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, be sure to subscribe at syropotami.substack.com. So today we're looking into, frankly, a disturbing incident. Thousands of everyday electronics, like pagers and radios exploding across Lebanon and Syria. We'll be examining reports from UN experts, first-hand accounts, and even claims from former Mossad agents.
What's immediately striking, I think, is the sheer scale of this event. It's not just, a few isolated incidents. We're talking about a coordinated detonation of devices across two countries. This raises serious questions, I think, about the planning, the resources, and the intent behind such an operation.
Yeah, the reports we have indicate a devastating human cost. At least 32 people are confirmed dead, and over 3,250 individuals suffered injuries, with 200 in critical conditions. It's particularly tragic to note that children and medical personnel are among the casualties.
This speaks to a disturbing disregard, I would say, for civilian lives. The indiscriminate nature of these attacks, detonating thousands of devices simultaneously, it makes it impossible to distinguish between combatants and non-combatants. And that's a clear violation of international humanitarian law, which mandates the protection of civilians during armed conflict.
Right, and it gets even more complex when we consider that many of these devices were reportedly distributed among individuals associated with the Hezbollah resistance group. Hezbollah is engaged in an ongoing conflict with Israel along the border, which raises questions about the specific targeting of these attacks.
That's right. If the intent was to disrupt Hezbollah's communication network, why target devices used by the general population? The widespread distribution of these devices suggests a broader objective, perhaps to sow terror and chaos among civilians, a tactic consistent with state-sponsored terrorism.
Adding to the intrigue are claims by former Mossad agents who are openly taking responsibility for this operation. They're describing a meticulously planned campaign spanning over a decade to infiltrate Hezbollah's communication network.
These accounts, if true, paint a chilling picture of how state-sponsored terrorism can operate in the modern era. The deliberate use of seemingly harmless electronic devices as tools of violence raises alarming implications for global security. It completely changes our understanding of what constitutes a weapon in the 21st century.
And if you can believe it, these former Mossad agents are actually sharing details about their marketing tactics. Mm-hmm. Apparently, they created an entire fake advertising campaign promoting bulkier, more durable pagers through platforms like YouTube.
The fact that such a deceptive campaign proved successful is deeply concerning. It highlights the vulnerabilities of online platforms and the ease with which misinformation and malicious actors can exploit them for their own agendas. And remember, this is a Syropotami magazine podcast, and you can subscribe for more deep dives like this at syropotami.substack.com.
They're even going so far as to describe these modified pagers as booby traps with explosives hidden inside seemingly ordinary batteries.
And that's where things cross a very clear line in terms of international law. The use of booby traps disguised as harmless objects is strictly prohibited under international humanitarian law, especially when deployed in areas with a high probability of civilian presence. This is a blatant disregard for the fundamental principles of distinction and proportionality that govern the conduct of warfare.
It's unsettling, Their chilling detachment from the human consequences of their actions. One agent even compared the operation to the Truman Show, with them as the directors manipulating events from behind the scenes.
It's a disturbing analogy, I think, that exposes a dangerous mindset viewing conflict as a carefully orchestrated spectacle where human lives are treated as mere pawns. This raises profound ethical questions about the use of such manipulative tactics and the psychological impact on both the perpetrators and the victims.
This isn't just a theoretical debate about ethics either, Their actions have real-world consequences, resulting in deaths, injuries, and trauma for countless innocent people. And remember, this operation was deliberately targeted at a resistance group already engaged in an armed conflict, which adds another layer of complexity to the legal and ethical implications.
Absolutely. This raises serious questions about proportionality and the justification for such widespread harm. Was the goal solely to disrupt Hezbollah's operations, or was there an element of collective punishment directed at the civilian population? These are critical questions that demand further investigation.
One of the agents even admitted that this specific operation likely wouldn't work again due to heightened awareness, but then went on to issue a chilling warning. Don't mess with us.
Yeah.
It seems like a blatant attempt to intimidate anyone who might challenge their actions.
That statement speaks volumes about their underlying ideology. It prioritizes aggression and a might makes right mentality over diplomacy and peaceful resolutions. This is a dangerous precedent that could escalate tensions and further destabilize the region.
So what are the potential consequences for those involved? Can they be held accountable for these actions?
The UN experts we discussed earlier are unequivocal in their assessment. They are calling for a full investigation and for states to bring to justice those who ordered and executed these attacks. This could involve exercising universal jurisdiction over war crimes, which allows states to prosecute individuals for grave violations of international law, regardless of where the crimes occurred or the nationality of the perpetrators.
And these agents haven't been shy about naming names either. They directly implicated individuals at the highest levels of the Israeli government, including former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
This could have significant ramifications for Israel on the international stage. The accusations of state-sponsored terrorism and war crimes are incredibly serious and demand a thorough and impartial investigation by international bodies.
Remember, this is a Syria Magazine podcast, and you can subscribe for more deep dives like this at syriapotamia.substack.com. The UN has already called for such an investigation, and many international legal experts believe there's substantial evidence to support the claim that these attacks constitute war crimes.
The deliberate use of booby traps, the indiscriminate targeting of civilians, and the apparent intent to spread terror all point to clear violations of international humanitarian law. This case raises profound questions about state accountability and the need to uphold international legal norms in an increasingly complex and interconnected world.
The scale and audacity of this, using everyday technology as weapons of terror, it raises some chilling questions about the future of conflict. If seemingly harmless devices can be turned into instruments of death and destruction, what does that mean for our collective sense of, safety and security?
It's unsettling, a deeply unsettling prospect, I think. This case highlights the urgent need for international cooperation and stricter regulations governing the use of technology, particularly in the context of warfare. We need to establish clear boundaries and accountability mechanisms to prevent such blatant disregard for human life.
Yeah, this incident also forces us to confront the very nature of state power and the potential for abuse when advanced technology is wielded without ethical constraints. It's a stark reminder that even in the 21st century, the specter of state-sponsored violence remains a very real threat.
Absolutely. The international community cannot afford to turn a blind eye to these alleged war crimes. This case demands a thorough and impartial investigation, and if the evidence supports the claims, those responsible, including high-ranking officials, must be held accountable in an international court of law.
And it's crucial to remember that behind legal arguments and geopolitical implications, there are real human beings who have suffered tremendously as a result of these actions. We must not forget the victims, the families torn apart, and the communities forever scarred by this tragedy.
Their stories must serve as a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and the urgent need for justice and accountability. This incident should be a wake-up call for the international community to reevaluate the ethical implications of technological advancements and to strengthen the mechanisms that safeguard human rights and protect civilian lives during conflict.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today exploring a truly disturbing incident that has exposed deep ethical and legal dilemmas. This is a Syria Magazine podcast. If you'd like to delve deeper into critical global issues, be sure to subscribe at syriapotamia.substack.com.
This incident leaves us with many unanswered questions, but one thing is clear: the world needs to pay attention. The implications of this case extend far beyond the borders of Lebanon and Syria. It's a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present potential for violence, even in the guise of seemingly innocuous technology.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to continue exploring these issues and to stay informed about the ongoing developments in this complex and concerning situation.